Corbolic V2. This is a super safe and effective natural anabolic. Not only is this product going to help you increase protein synthesis, which basically means muscle recovery and growth, it also may inhibit myostatin, which is a protein in your body that is known to inhibit muscle growth. This is a complete natural anabolic that works through multiple different pathways, has multiple trademarked ingredients. If you are a natural athlete looking for that edge, Corbolic V2 is what you need. Get yourself some.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Pro Physique Code. This is another super fun episode where I get to talk to one of our past winners from the Summer Sculpt. So I have Dan with me today. How are you doing, Dan?
Great, Christina. Great to see you today.
We were just chatting a couple minutes ago about how exciting it is to finally get to actually have a conversation because Dan and I have talked a lot on Facebook and on email and all sorts of things, but we've never actually had a conversation. And so I'm excited to catch up today and just kind of get a feel for, like how you've been able to maintain your success, because I think anybody who has been in a Facebook group, like in the recent future with any of our transformation challenges, they know who you are because you're there, you're present, you're so helpful. And that's like my favorite part about the groups is that people can be competing, but help each other.
Sure.
And you're a great example of that. But you've also just been such an inspiration because you've been able to maintain stuff. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So first of all, the groups have been great. I'm at a different position where because I'm not competing, perhaps it's more freeing for me to share information where somebody who's competing may want to hold back their particular strategy, but I'm not competing in these groups anymore. So it's actually, whatever information, questions people have, I'm happy to answer and help people along with their journey. So yeah, it's just about a year, just over a year since the New Year challenge from 2024 wrapped up. And one of the first changes I made there was to take a break from my macro tracking, which was very precise, spreadsheet based, as you know, based on my conversations with Paul. It was very, very particular, down to the gram of whatever I was tracking. And that can be very tedious. And I wanted to kind of move away from that. So the first thing I did was kind of took a break from that tracking to try to move more toward a mindful, intuitive approach for myself. And I think that mindfulness, more so than the intuitive, just thinking about what you're eating, the portion size, how hungry am I relative to the food options that I have. Right. That for me has made has been a big difference post challenge. During the challenge, I had an experience where I took a diet break, and that was my first time taking such a break in the midst of a really regimented type of macro tracking approach, and introducing new foods or old new foods into that was somewhat problematic because the cravings really went through the roof. So when the challenge ended, so lesson learned from that, when the challenge ended, I really just adjusted portion sizes of the type of foods I was already eating. I didn't expand things so dramatically at first. I've since, obviously it's been a year now, I can pretty much eat whatever I want to within reason in terms of portion sizes and such. So I've not, this is probably not the approach that I would recommend for everyone to take because people have different levels of adherence that they need to focus on. But I haven't had to go back to that very regimented spreadsheet-based macro tracking. I have that in my back pocket. I know what to do. I know the mechanics of that. If I need to do that, or if I had some particular, goal or strategy or target in mind, I could revert to that. But because that does take extra time and I'm kind of an efficiency, I'm very mindful of my efficiency as well. And that sort of takes time in terms of meal prep and all that. So, but yeah, it's been a pretty smooth transition for me into maintenance. And I've done some different things over the past year to kind of challenge myself with a minor bulk, a minor cut, and other things as well.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up with the not tracking because that was something that I did forever. Like I was somebody who found a lot of comfort in the routine tracking. I, at one point, had a streak that was like many thousands of days. It was ridiculous on my FitnessPal. And then last year when I was training for my ultra, calories kept going up to stay with it, that it got to a point where I stopped tracking because I was like, I'm not going to exceed like where I'm supposed to be. So I would just
Right.
kind of like mentally track. And, you get to a place where whether it's years and years of doing it or it's spending, a certain amount of time being like extra super diligent and really getting into weeds with it, like either way, you're getting that like expertise time with it. And then in the future, you can get back to that. And, so I found like I went into a bit of a cut at the start of this year, kind of in line with the new year, new start, and just wanted to take off, like 6 to 7 pounds. And as soon as I was done with that, I was like, oh, I don't want to track anymore. And
Yeah.
it was something that was always like, and I still don't find it like problematic, but it is kind of nice once you've experienced that to be able to go back to trusting yourself. And I think that's a big piece of it where people don't necessarily trust themselves to not go off the rails. And that's the tricky part for sure.
Yeah. I think that's for those that are coming out of this current challenge, and certainly another great set of people in the challenge, both those that are competing as well as that just want to be part of the accountability in the group of like-minded people to be able to chat with and bounce ideas off of. So it's certainly a great group that's finishing up now. I can relate to the sort of nervousness and anxiousness of I don't trust myself yet to do this, and so what do I do? And I think small steps, baby steps there can be very helpful. Something that I do, which helps me stay on track, is I have several meals and snacks that are kind of on autopilot.
Yes.
I'll call it. So I don't have to. I know what my breakfast is going to be tomorrow. I'm going to have a protein shake with a bowl of oatmeal, berries, a protein yogurt, and a cup of coffee. And that's going to be my breakfast that I have pretty much every single day. On the weekends, there are some exceptions to that where we do some things as a family and so forth. But that's what I eat. I know I don't track the macros, but I know that is going to be satiating for me. It's going to have sufficient protein for me and give me the energy that I need to last to my first morning snack, which is an apple and a cup of
Same
coffee.
thing. Yeah.
Same thing. So yeah, I've tracked all those before. I know what those are. My lunch is also pretty much on autopilot as well. It's a salad with some protein source, a very big salad with a protein source. So for those that are trying to move away from tracking every single thing, if you track once and you know what that is going to be generally, you can swap out, so for me, a different flavor of a yogurt or different berries or fruit or whatever is going to be that substitution. It's not going to be materially different in terms of the macro contents. And so I don't need to know exactly how much this apple weighs or, what the difference of blackberry versus blueberries versus raspberries are in terms of their macro contents. It's fine. It's all kind of falling in there.
Yeah.
And, I have other ways, the way my clothes are fitting, what I see in the mirror, the scale are my kind of guideposts that I use those as a way. Okay, if I'm getting a little too generous with myself, and then I know to kind of pull that back or up my steps or that type of thing to kind of tweak those things. So I have those guardrails built in to what I'm looking at to keep myself on track as well without having to go to the macro tracking.
I love having those other options so that we can maybe drop like one thing at a time that we're focusing on, and then that way, if somebody's really craving that, like, I just can't think about this many things like at once, but they also want to kind of hold on to stuff tightly. I've been exploring that with more clients recently where I've had them stop weighing in, and maybe we continue to do measurements if they still want to have like a bit more diligence than just like how clothes fit. Cause like that can be tricky too. Cause you know how like sometimes you can wake up and you feel perfectly fine. You're like, ooh, I'm hot shit. You like everything's great. And then you step on the scale and it's up 2 pounds. And all of a sudden you're like, I am so bloated.
Yeah.
Like,
It can ruin your day in some aspects, right? Yeah.
Everything feels different all of a sudden. And so I do always recommend like trying to keep stuff in so you don't cold turkey it, because that's usually where things can get away from us, especially at the end of a diet when things are, a bit more vulnerable. Your body's been experiencing that. It is super in the mood for extra food.
Yes.
And so having a bit in there, I think it helps people a lot. And then just kind of choosing, I like to think of like the high value ones. So like if the scale is really getting in your head, then maybe we just get rid of that and we keep those other ones. I love activity-based goals. And so we know that you are like a master of steps. Like the trend you have started blows
Yeah.
my mind of the amount of steps that people get. Did you see? I think it was this group. Somebody got like 70,000 in a day. Wait,
Yes.
was that you?
No, but not me.
Okay.
No, no.
I was
That was
like, wait.
yeah, Joy and Noah were competing,
Yeah.
and they kept upping each other, and thankfully they tapped out. And I'm not going to say who tapped out, but thankfully they stopped that because it's not serving anyone's goals really to go to that level day after day or so
Oh, it was
rapid.
so funny. I loved it. I had people emailing me there where they were like, would you mind telling me what they do for a living? I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
this is incredible. They got to just be moving all day long. When you were, working out of the reverse and like different stuff, and you had mentioned a bulk,
Yeah.
did you have anything like that that you were specifically working on in the gym that kind of helped anchor your goals with stuff? Or like, how did you kind of shift your mind away from, want to get lean and like focusing on that big time?
So what was important to me is that I maintain the habits that I had worked hard to ingrain in myself and practice so regularly. So my biggest fear was losing those habits. So I've kept the habits, but I've changed the intensity. So
I-
I still walk every day. I track my steps. I did a lot of treadmill walking, during the challenge last year because it's here in the Northeast, weather-wise, it wasn't always conducive to that. I always need to put sunscreen on when I go out during the daytime, given my pale skin, and so that is a deterrent for me
Yeah.
to go outside and walk. I'm aware of those deterrents or things that kind of make things easier and so forth. So, but I have since in the fall, I started a daily sort of outdoor walking routine, which I really love. That's actually one of the highlights of my day. And I usually do that during the evenings.
Yeah.
No sunscreen necessary. And
Right.
also, when it's cool outside, you can kind of be very comfortable. But, I listen to music primarily, and that's just a way it's almost like a therapy session for me where I can just walk and collect my thoughts and think about whatever it is on my mind and kind of, it allows me to kind of take a step back from things. But
Yeah.
going back to wanting to retain habits, I work out 6 days a week, and to different levels of intensity. So when I finished the challenge, I did take a break from that for a week or maybe 10 days or so. And then I got back to it, and I just lowered the number of sets that I was doing. So my workout went from about an hour down to like a half an hour. So I was kind of doing a maintenance type of a workout, which still checked the box. I still reinforced the habit for myself.
Yeah.
But because I wasn't like looking to either bulk or be in a deficit. I was just kind of looking to maintain. So I want to maintain the habit, but also maintain the muscle mass that I've built, and I'm still consuming the right amount of protein to maintain that and all. And so I was going to let myself, when I'm ready to then up my intensity, I'll know that,
Feel it.
and then I can also up my calories to kind of correlate to that as well. And so that I kind of took the summer off, as it turned out. So as I look back, I track my workouts in a spreadsheet, and so it wasn't until September that I started to ramp up my workouts again. And again, that was when I did sort of a mini bulk there, as I felt I had more energy. I've had little like aches and pains. I have a shoulder injury, which is now kind of rearing its head again, and I probably need to have certain minor surgery or something on that. But
Yeah.
I've had to work around like a knee problem. My right bicep is a little bit painful at times from doing curls, and so I'm now 55, and so you have to work around those issues, also energy levels, time commitments, and so forth. And so it wasn't until September that I felt like I was ready to get back to it, and that coincidentally corresponded with the fall challenge that I was part of the group there, which is a great motivator to see people doing those things and wanting, even though I'm not competing or participating in that level, I look at the group multiple times per day and interact, and that's motivating in and of itself. And so I started to do a sort of a mini bulk there pretty much through the end of the challenge. So I guess my activities have corresponded very, very directly with the challenges that you've been running. And then I took a break over, at the end of the year, and I had a cortisone shot in my shoulder, which it was a nice temporary fix for that. So I was able to get back to some heavier lifting and more regimented workouts, which again corresponded to the New Year challenge that's just wrapping up now.
Yeah.
And one of my goals was, even though I wasn't competing, I wanted to do like a mini cut there. I wanted to see what I could do when I didn't have the motivation of the competition.
Yeah.
Do I still have it in me to apply what I've learned? And so for my birthday, which was back in April, I wanted to see what I could sort of get down to a lower body fat percentage and kind of maintain that, not just like a one day thing, but sort of maintain that for a few weeks. So I was able to get down. I had a DEXA scan on my birthday, so I was able to get down to 9% body fat.
Wow.
Without macro tracking, I did some light tracking, which was just like weighing the things that are not on autopilot, the things that would tend to kind of stray a bit in terms of portion sizes. I just weighed those things. I emailed myself, what I was weighing.
Yeah.
I was ready to go to the next level if I needed to, but that was enough for me to be mindful enough to know what I was consuming and stay on track there.
Yeah, I love that method. That's usually what I do now on like vacations and stuff.
Okay.
I find is cause like that'll be when I don't really want to bust out like my fitness pal at all. And like it doesn't really matter because I'm on vacation. And I'm not somebody I used to be somebody who would go crazy, where it was like, vacation, better get all the things.
Yeah.
And you live and you learn over the years. And now, if anything, I almost err on the side of like caution too much, where I'm very like, is it worth it before I'll try something and like don't want to waste on it, but because I want that flexibility. And so I find adding up like protein and then maybe kind of getting like a guesstimation of where you're at with like calories can be helpful. But if you don't want to get super in the weeds with it, just weighing the portion sizes with things like pretzels or like the little snacks that can really easily cereal.
Nuts,
Peanut butter. Yeah. Anything like that. It's not even so much that you have to hold yourself back, but just continuing to have that awareness of, oh, that looks like.
Right.
And then
I think if for those listening, any one of those steps that resonates with you, whether it's weighing or looking at just the protein content or the calories, whatever it is that keeps you mindful, that will go a long way toward adhering to what you're trying to achieve during that period of time. And as you say, kind of remind you, is it worth eating? My wife, as you know, did the challenge last year. She's been in the challenges since. Due to some health problems, she's not been able to compete at the level that she's wanted to. Hopefully those are going to be behind her soon. Yeah. But we kind of, if we're out eating, it's like, is this worth eating? She tries something first. Is it worth eating? Oh, not really. This bread isn't that good. Okay, fine, whatever. I'll skip it.
Right.
It's not that important to me to eat something just for the sake of eating. If I'm not going to enjoy it, what's the point?
Yeah. And I think you do start to get just like once you've gotten into the rhythm of feeling really good and the formula that works for that, I think you get more protective over feeling that way. And so, I mean, I'm 38 now and at the point where I very much know which foods are going to mess me up for like days on end. And like, I'm not in the mood to deal with that. And I don't want to, and you start thinking about like the different things or, alcohol has been a big one for me where like, given the situation, like I'm much more picky about whether or not I even want to bother with like one glass of wine at like a lunch or something. And it's not that there's inherently anything wrong with it. It's just since I'm a weirdo with two fitness trackers, I know that my body goes haywire if I take like one sip of wine and then it's like, okay, well, am I okay with the fact that's going to ruin my sleep tonight, which means that my run tomorrow is probably going to feel like poop and then I'm going to be in a mood. And you start this like cascade and it becomes so much different than just, do I want, like, am I craving something? Which I think, I don't know if you've heard like Danica talk about stuff where she kind of goes into thinking like those decision-making processes through a bit more with cravings of like, is that really what I want? Which I think it's important to honor those. Like, so that you don't go bonkers. And sometimes it is just as simple as you just want the stinking donut. And so like
Have it.
for it,
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
Why
but
not?
pay attention to that. I like to ask people to do that too, where it's like, okay, you wanted to do an untracked meal and we gave it a shot. How did you feel afterwards? Like, did we make good choices? Did we feel good about that? Or did we feel unhinged? And kind of explore that stuff. Because in the end, if you're not prepared to really keep this stuff up, the likelihood of you being able to maintain where you got, kind of fades away. So we have to
Right.
figure out what metric it is. Because I mean, I wish everybody loved filling out spreadsheets, like, because I love them. I get so nosy with everything, and people be like, "Can I add this?" I'm like, "Yes, please, all of your ideas," and but not everybody loves that.
Right.
So whatever it is, finding that one thing that makes you feel good is gonna take you
Sure.
far.
Sure. I do want to go back to the alcohol point, just in case people are
Yeah.
wondering. I've been kind of vocal about my, being alcohol free, which I'm now been alcohol free for 3 years. Again, my wife consumes alcohol, so I'm not like anti-alcohol in any way. It doesn't work for me,
Right.
and I do attribute abstaining from alcohol as a big factor for my maintenance as well. That I don't have to worry about recovering from drinking too much or tracking empty calories or all the things that go with that. So I know that there's people who are in the challenge now are probably going to resume some drinking, and I would encourage them to kind of take that slow and still track that. That's probably something that should be tracked. So people do know, to what extent they're consuming that, but not to vilify alcohol in any way.
Yeah.
But it can serve certain purposes, but it can harm performance and other, sleep as you mentioned is a big
Oh,
factor.
fat loss goals, I mean, that's probably like a number one game killer.
Yeah.
I mean, and the really hard part, especially for people dieting or maybe they have like an extensive diet history, and so their calories just aren't getting quite as high in like their maintenance and stuff like that. If you think about it, I was going through this with a client right before we started our call actually about so she likes high noons. And so those are like 100 calories. And so if we were going to track that and we're doing macros, we want to be able to take it from, carbs or fats. We're not going to steal it from our proteins. And so if we divide it by 4 or 9, 4 for carbs, 9 for fats, we're looking at logging either 25 carbs or 9 fats. Now, if it's somebody, who is on 125 carbs a day, and now we're logging a 25 carb cocktail and we're having to give up 20% of our day. And if it's like once, on the weekend or something like that, I could see, working it in if it's a big
Mhm.
driver and it's like really helping with stuff. But that's where, I'll talk to some people that are having, 3 or 4 glasses of wine like multiple times per night or during the week.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, think of all the food we could be eating,
Right.
like, you know? And so I like to, as people come out of that kind of stuff and numbers are especially low, if I'm being entirely honest, I can't remember where I got this number from a million years ago, but it's worked as a good marker for clients, has been about 15% of your daily calories. Like, try not to exceed that. And so even if that just kind of helps with like what choices we're making, maybe we're not
Yeah.
getting blended margarita,
Right.
or something like that. And then that way it becomes something else that like we don't let have control over us because
Right. Right.
as a vice, I think it's one of those things that it's very easy, especially going into the warm season. This is a
Sure.
dangerous time of year, Like the fact that you had so much success in a summer sculpt, like I applaud you so much because for
I
me,
was new. I was in the new year one, so
oh
I
wait,
did.
no, you were a New
Yeah.
Year. You
Yeah.
finished
Yeah.
right when summer started.
That's
Duh.
right. That's right.
Sorry,
Yeah. Yeah.
misspoke. Anybody who diets through the summer, that one always blows me away because like for me, that's when I want to be at barbecues. I want to like all of that kind of so I'm not thinking about it as much. During the winter months is when I'm like, like you with weather and stuff, I'm here in Denver. So I'm like, "Ugh, I could walk on my treadmill all day because
Yeah.
I'm trapped."
Right. Yeah.
Like,
And it keeps you warm, so why not?
Yes, exactly. When it's crazy outside, I'm like, no, I just want to be outside and relaxing. I don't want to be stressing about
Yeah.
anything. And so, yeah, I think just figuring out whatever it is that gets you comfortable and maintaining things in a good spot, and then not feeling like anything needs to be vilified. Like it's it's so broad for each person, and I have yet to see somebody who truly was like, the only reason I found was success was because I cut this one thing out of my life, you know?
Yeah, it's rarely that one thing that would make such a difference, right?
Yeah, yeah, big lifestyle changes, but small decisions over time, not having to light everything on fire and then start over again.
Yeah, because change is hard. And so, people coming into the challenge and those who might be starting the summer sculpt, I think you don't want to change up everything in your life because that's not sustainable either. Going into it, you want to minimize change. So make your substitutions. If you have a snack at 11 o'clock every morning, have that snack. But maybe instead of if it was a donut before, if it's something different now that it's friendlier macros for you, but you still can keep that same frequency so you don't feel like you're missing out on something at a time of day where your body is used to getting some additional nutrients or calories of some sort.
Yeah, 100%. And paying attention to that kind of stuff just helps you really like pay attention to your body's cues and things, which takes us back to like if somebody eventually wanted to not be tracking any of that, it's important to really like be listening to that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And sometimes I'll even find for myself with tracking, if I have numbers because I just want to be like a gold star student with stuff, I'll be not hungry and look at it like, oh, I have 40 carbs. Huh. And like, then I'm just gonna go find something to eat for it. And like, there's times where we want to be hitting those numbers anyways and like pushing it for sure. But, going back to like your maintenance and things like that, sometimes we just don't need, we just pay attention, learn how that works. And that helps you get to a really even keeled place too. And so there's just a ton of different approaches and like different ways. And I think the important thing to recognize too is that for one person, they can end up having to do each and every one of them at different points, and have to go through different stuff. And like sometimes it's going to be 1 month this focus worked for me and 1 month this one did, and just kind of
Right.
figuring that out.
And it could be seasonality, as you mentioned, summer versus winter and other seasons that people may experience may have different drivers or triggers associated with them. Some people during football season,
Yeah.
there may be some correlation to beer drinking and pretzels or whatever, pizza, that type of a thing. And so you may need to be more regimented to not eliminate that, but kind of control that in a way that meets your goals.
Yeah, I had one client who, her and her husband would tailgate. And so it was always something where it was like a huge part of their community. It was very important to just their family life. And so we knew we had everything except for tailgating season to work with. And so we would have to like manipulate stuff. And then we knew on those days we needed more flexibility. But then we'd say, okay, well, on the other ones where we can control it, we can dial up or dial down
Yeah.
to kind of meet where we want to be.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that balance can happen over the span of a week, not just in the 24-hour day period, right? You can have that balance that works itself out in some ways. I did share this, I think, at one point with Paul. During the challenge, my wife and I didn't want to upend our lives, and so we routinely have sushi for
Yeah.
dinner on Saturday night, either going to a restaurant or ordering in most often, and we kept that. And I like to sleep in on the weekends when I can. And so I actually would have I would only have 2 meals on Saturday. So that,
Yeah.
going from 3 meals to 2 meals gives you that buffer that I can then have a larger dinner and not be so concerned about the macro contents for that particular thing or the sodium and other things that might go with it. Because it's kind of balancing out for what I have during the day. And then I'll
Yeah.
know that come Sunday or Monday, I may need to make adjustments to account for that as well. So
Yeah.
if you have, it's not one size fits all. You need to find what works for you and then make it work and not just sort of throw it. Okay, I give up. This doesn't work. No, you can find a way to make things work if
Yeah.
you have that motivation.
Yeah, I always think it's so interesting because as new challenges are starting, I'll start to get a whole bunch of emails from people that will ask me for like your specific plan. Like, what plan did Dan follow and what exactly, and they want like all of this, and they'll, and like with all of the winners, and they'll ask for stuff. And I mean, most of the time I'm like, I don't know. Like I wasn't a part of it. But you can join the group and ask him.
Right.
But I always try to let them know, like, but you guys are completely different people, like
Yeah.
with completely different experiences. And I think that it can be hard if people do try to implement that stuff and then they're like, why isn't this working?
Right.
And it's like, well, it's not because you're doing anything wrong or because you're not right for this or something. It's just that this is not necessarily right for you. And getting over those humps, like I feel like if you're in a dieting phase and you're trying to get stuff to work, if you're at the point where it's like at peak annoying, you're probably about to see something happen. Like,
Yes. Yeah.
and
A
like
good reminder. Yeah.
keep going. Like unless we're ridiculously low or something like that, like make smart decisions. But usually I find that when people are like at the I don't know, that means it's coming. And then you get that boost of like, oh my God, it's all working, and you get happy
Right.
again.
Yeah. You
Throw
have
more
to
time in
you have
it.
to experience the lows in order to appreciate the highs of what is to
Yeah.
come.
Yeah. And
Uh,
getting 9% body fat, like you're gonna do that up and down, right?
yes, definitely, definitely. And going back to the one size fits all is not the solution here. If you looked at what I did versus what my wife did during the challenge, very different approaches. So even within the same household, we didn't take a full meal prep of here's an entire meal that's already prepared. We did a lot of component based. My
Mhm.
wife cannot eat the same things over and over again. I can eat
Right.
on repeat the same things. It doesn't matter to me. I'm not so picky. She likes to have more variety with her meals. So we took a component approach where we'd have chicken breast or salmon, and those things then get combined with other things to make different meals throughout the day. So even just two of us in the same household following very similar approaches, the meals were different and outcomes were very similar.
Yeah.
But you need to find what works for you and what you feel like. Yeah, I can do this forever. I love the breakfast that I have every day. I feel like I could just eat that for the rest of my life and be satisfied. And again, sometimes there's going to be some differences in variety thrown in there, but I'm not struggling to eat this or have a salad. My wife doesn't like have a salad as a meal with protein like I have for my lunch, but I do, and I can continue to sort of have that, and that's okay. She has her own thing, I have my own thing, and uh, it works. So people do need to find what works for them and find substitutions of things of foods that they enjoy. Because if you don't enjoy it, you're not going to stick.
100%. And that comes up a lot though, like with families. And a lot of times if somebody is, maybe they're the only one that's pursuing something like that and they don't have like a partner that's on board or that doesn't want to get into the mix of like stuff like that. And that can cause a lot of people to just be like, this isn't worth it because they,
Yes.
will get frustrated with things. And so the component based, I love that. I always recommend that to people, like, because then you can jazz it up however you want. It can be like
Exactly.
pretty close to their dinner. Maybe yours just doesn't have cheese or like whatever. And then the other thing, oh my gosh, and now I'm going to have a brain fart, that I was going to recommend that people do when they're working on stuff with their family, but I just completely lost it. Don't you
That's
hate
okay.
when that happens?
I do.
Um, yeah, because with having somebody in the house like do things with you, obviously it's going to make it a lot easier. I have found, depending on whatever my second idea was, a different one, that people don't find it as weird if you don't make it weird. Like when it comes to food stuff. And so like my husband, like I've always been somebody who like I don't usually eat dinner with the family. And he's a fantastic cook. I just normally don't eat like he cooks with a lot of cheese and like butter. And so I just don't normally eat that way.
Yeah.
And my kids have just always kind of seen that. And so it's funny because like when they set the table, they'll ask like, well, how many people are eating? And I always hang out with stuff, but it's just like the way I've always presented it is like a mom just ate earlier so I can like help with you guys, or I eat different things. Like now that they're older, I'll be like, no, my food was like perfectly measured for the amount of energy I need today, and I'm already good. And so I'll talk to people who are like, oh, well, I don't want it to be like I don't want my kids seeing me weigh things out, or I don't want this kind of stress, or like I don't want to have to think about dinner. And it's like the simpler that you keep things, the easier it is. Oh, now I remember. Ha! Just worked it back. Your routine meals is what I was gonna say. What are like if you reduce the fluctuating variables, it can get a lot
Yes.
easier. So if you're somebody where like that family meal at night is super important to you and being able to just have it be whatever you're having with the family, if those meals at the start of the day are ultra routine, then you know
Right.
where you can flex. And so like if
Exactly.
you know pizza is coming and you normally put peanut butter on your oatmeal and stuff like that, maybe we don't have the peanut butter that
Right.
morning because we're having pizza later on. And so but I think this still goes back to spending at least some time with like the tracking and getting a view of what all that adds up to and trying to do it with no judgment and just see what your body's used to because you don't want to shortchange yourself and it helps you just get a feel for like what things add up to without having to, constantly be in and out.
Right. Right. Oh, great point. And I think that if now I'm losing my train of thought about how I was going to respond to you there.
Look what we did. See, it's contagious, I swear. Normally I've got Steven here where he'll say something and it like jolts my brain back.
I'm sure
He'll
he
make a
distracts
joke.
you in many ways as well. So I'm sure that balances
Right.
it out. But I get the point that I think of, if you're tracking during the day, how far can you really go off on one meal,
Yeah.
right? In terms of dinner, and dinner is my sort of flexible meal for the day. We try to have dinner together as a family most days, and it's really just portion size that I focus on there.
Yeah.
And another thing, and I've shared this in the group, what I try to do, especially if I'm going out to dinner, but also if let's say pizza was going to be for dinner or something like that. We don't have pizza that often these days, but I try to quote unquote ruin my dinner. So I'll have like a yogurt or a protein bar like an hour before dinner, and then I'm just not that hungry.
Right.
So I'm not going to grab 2 pieces of pizza and eat, hurry up and eat those because my hunger level is down here. And so yeah, I can participate. I can have a piece of pizza, and it's fine. But you don't need to go overboard. And if you're not famished, I find that I personally make much better decisions when I'm not that hungry. So I try not to let myself get too full or too hungry, and my decision making seems to benefit from that.
Yeah, there's actually a name for that. It's like nutrient displacement, I want to say.
Okay.
And I will recommend to clients sometimes to do that with like a side salad. And it's like, it's not that we're saying this is better or that you shouldn't have as much of that, but we can kind of lay, a nice produce filled or protein filled, whatever it is, foundation that makes it so that we go into it not where we're just like starving with stuff, because that's usually where we're going to make bad decisions.
Exactly.
If somebody's going to do an untracked meal, one thing that I recommend for them is if they kind of know, like say it's date night or something like that. If they still want to try and track the rest of their day, I'll say, go for 50% of your carbs and your fats, and then hit 75% of your normal protein target. Because usually on a date night, like, I mean, there's some people who are definitely the exception that like are going to go get a big steak or something. I like that's not my ideal meal. So like I make sure I get the rest of my protein and then about half of my carbs and fats. And then that way, like I'm not starved throughout the rest of the day. I try to have those be like bro meals too. Like that's where it's going to be lean protein. I'm getting in my veggies, checking a whole bunch of boxes. And then
Right.
that way I cannot think about it later on.
You can enjoy yourself with that
Yeah.
night out and
And
not
it's
need
like,
to be bogged down from it.
yeah, you get to build more trust with yourself too, with things where it's like, I can do this and not have it go crazy. And, because if you think about it, like most people don't have a problem necessarily with losing the weight. It's about being able to keep it off. And so, that's where the real squeeze comes in with like the different strategies and stuff. So.
Sure.
Well, I'm so glad we got to go through all of this. Any last like tips that you want to throw out there for people?
I guess just along the lines of a follow-up what you just mentioned, I think the things that people are doing to make themselves successful during a diet are the things that they need to do to continue to be successful during maintenance, perhaps just not to the same extent.
Yes.
So all those good habits you developed, don't throw them away. Hold on to them tightly, but maybe not too tightly, and give yourself some flexibility there. But those are the things that are going to serve you well. That education, that intuition, and that is it worth it to eat this? Do I really am I really going to enjoy this? If I am, by all means, jump in, enjoy it, and then get back to what's important in terms of, what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I think, and we talked about this in a podcast like a while ago. I can't remember when we had done it, but we talked about like intuitive eating and stuff and what I think people want it to mean and like what it really means. And I think a lot of times people think that getting to a more intuitive place with stuff, they think it means they don't have to think as much, when
Right.
really it's in the name that like it's trusting your intuition, which means
Yes.
we have to understand that language and we have to be open to listening to it and finding that kind of stuff. And so I think as difficult as it is, because I will always tell people coming out of a diet is significantly harder than being in it, because you're going to be in your head and you're going to question absolutely everything. And all of it's probably 100% normal and you shouldn't freak out about any of it. Um, but, as you're coming out of that stuff, just, giving yourself the grace, paying attention to how you're feeling, what feels good, what doesn't, go slow, everything will be fine. In the end, with a lot of this, as long as we're not going crazy and going from like one end to the other, like there's no big fitness emergencies, like it's
Exactly.
like go to bed, start
Yeah.
over,
Yeah.
and you'll probably be fine. Like, and if we give our best effort each and every day and you just rack those up, and then you're great. Like with your routine, I mean, that pretty much every day is exactly the same. And there's a lot of like comfort to get from that. Did you see there's research that I think it was like a meta study done. I'd have to look at it again, where they said that 6 days of resistance training paired with a calorie deficit is the best way to maintain your muscle. And it's funny because
I'll
like
see that. Check that out.
with some stuff you would think that maybe it would be too much and then like maybe you're putting it at risk. And so it's interesting though that it showed that it was better with stuff. And then, it kind of leaves less room for error. Some people love that. Some people absolutely do not want to give that much. And so just really taking that time, we had a recent episode with Dr. Adam Ibrahim, one of our coaches, who dives into all of this with his dissertation too. And like, what I loved about it was that the questionnaire and the program design put a lot of onus on the client, where it was like, okay, identify your like bad behavior, or not like bad behaviors, but like the things you don't want to do anymore. Identify the things you do want to do, and like then helped them. And like, I feel like that kind of stuff makes you, and it's like checking in with a coach too. You have to type it out. And then you have to be like,
Yeah.
"Ugh." Like, oops, like, and that's the spreadsheets and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think sometimes that's like the most powerful part, is even before that gets sent in a check-in, having that self-awareness of like, okay, well now it's right in front of me and I see
Right.
what I need to shore up and go from there with stuff. So,
Yeah. Just the act of getting out of your head into something physical, and
yeah,
you can see it in a different light.
yeah,
And something that you touched on, which was very timely in one of the podcasts last year around this time, was for people coming out of the challenge, they may now face some peer or family pressure because they no longer have I'm doing this challenge, I'm not going to go out doing this or whatever because I'm focused on this. But now that it's over and people don't have that, quote unquote excuse,
yeah,
they feel pressured into falling into prior sort of bad habits, because other people are going to be like, okay, now you can do it. You don't have the reason to
yeah.
not do it. So why aren't you joining us for this thing? So I think that can be a challenging um, space to navigate for some people as well. And I think it comes down to, priorities, and it doesn't need to be all or nothing, but there's ways to participate without the food or drinking participation to the extent that it was problematic for someone before.
Yeah, it's always, is it worth it? Like, it's so funny. We were on a family vacation recently, and my oldest is 12. And at some point, we were traveling for his sports,
Okay.
and everybody was moody. We drove to Florida from Colorado, so we'd all been in the
All
car.
right.
And at some point, he said something like, I just hope this is worth it, or something. And of course, as a mom, I whipped around. I'm like, oh, you can't say that. We're on this trip for you. Uh,
It better
I was
be.
talking to him about it later because then all that week I kept bringing it up with stuff where like we talked to him about, opportunities for his behavior. And like this can go to adults where it would just be like, you have an opportunity with everything now to ask yourself, did I make it worth it? Like, is it worth it? And I was like, he was like, you're going to ask me this every day, huh? And I was like, yes, because you accidentally just brought up like your life motto, where from here on out with everything, is it worth it? Am I making it worth it? And I think where the true success lies is when we can get out of needing, a $6,000 prize at the end of something being the goal. And I mean, it's great to have those, like people who do it repeat it, it's great to keep chasing that stuff, but being able to say to yourself, like, okay, I do really want the dessert, even though I've already hit my numbers today and everything. But tomorrow morning when I wake up, I'm going to be really annoyed with myself. And then I'm going to spend the entire day
Yeah.
beating myself up. And it's like, even just recognizing that, it's like, maybe we find a different way to make stuff work. And just realizing each day is an opportunity to win. And, that can be divided up too.
Absolutely, yes. I think people think about future self as their future self in 10 or 20 years, but your future self is 2 hours from now, or it's tomorrow morning, as you just mentioned. So I think about that also as like regret prevention.
Yeah.
How am I going to feel about that tomorrow or next week? And can I prevent that now, in sort of not derail myself and then regret it later when I can't change it? Now I have the chance to change it and not go down, this path versus that path.
Yeah, just that moment of executive function and deciding with stuff and just that pause, which
Yeah.
I forget that's like a strategy. I forget what it's like, halt. Oh yeah, and then you're supposed to go through the different feelings or something. But just being able to be like,
Yeah.
I don't know, give yourself that moment. You're worth
Absolutely.
it. Yay! I'm so glad that we got to talk. If I ever escape Facebook jail, I will be back in the groups. I'm very
Great.
depressed right now that I have a lifetime ban from Facebook.
Really?
Yeah.
Lifetime?
Yes. I'm permanently disabled. If I try to go back in and make a new account, it's like, we know you're you.
Yeah.
And so I did get them to point out that apparently my Facebook has been hacked and
Wow.
has been used to be a bad guy out there somewhere. They won't
Oh,
tell me
sorry to
what.
hear that.
But it was bad enough that the bots got me real
Yeah.
bad. And then they were like, never again. And so I was having a heart attack because, of course, so when this comes out, the challenge pictures will have been done. But we're recording this the week that everyone's submitting day 90 and they have a lot of questions. And then, of course, it was also like an hour before Paul's Facebook Live.
Right.
And it said it was going to erase all of my posts. And so I was like, wait, I make the group.
Yeah.
I
Right.
called Sarah in a panic because I was like, can you see if it's still there? So
Yeah, I think the original questions got dropped. The original questions that were posted for
for
you got
Paul,
dropped. And also
yeah.
the banner pictures got dropped. I'm not sure if you saw that.
No,
The top banner
I can't
image.
see anything.
Okay.
I'm just poof. So, yeah. So, I've heard Ben got back in. Same thing happened to him. And so his got fixed yesterday. But so they're in managing everything in there. But it's my ultimate favorite part, and I was like, this is not fair.
Yeah.
Take it away.
Seeing all the pictures and the transformations come rolling in. Yeah, that's a fun time. Yeah.
But so keep killing it, guys. I mean, it'll be in the past by the time you hear this, but I'm pouting here for now because
Hopefully it was resolved going to the future. Hopefully it was resolved soon, hopefully today or tomorrow, and you're able to see some of the final ones coming in. So
yes, yes, I'm meta verified. So anybody out there, if your life is on the internet and you need someone to help you, you have to pay for it, and then you can talk to a human. So now I know about that. If anyone has any questions, drop comments below. But yeah, always, if you guys have questions for any of us, Dan is incredible and he pops in there and answers stuff. And so tell him how amazing he is. And if you guys have any questions about the upcoming challenge, drop them below. By the time this comes out, guided coaching will be on sale. It's an 8-week challenge, so the package is smaller, $2.99 for the 8 weeks. If you have questions about that, you can go to our website and there's like a chat with us box, and that'll take you to Sandy, our client coordinator, and she's amazing. She's like the matchmaker, gets everybody put with the right person. And yeah, I think that's all the housekeeping stuff. And then it's like summer. Like, oh, I'm so excited. I'm so sick of the cold and the gray and brown. Like Colorado's green for like the next 15 minutes and then it's dry out and go brown on me. But
Well, enjoy the green. Hopefully it's a little longer than 15 minutes for you.
right.
We're having a lot of rain. Our April rain has gone into May rain now, but hopefully that wraps up soon here. Yeah.
Yeah, the May showers. Do you get like freedom from it in June, or does it like haunt?
Well, it's not supposed to be so rainy here in May, but this week in particular, it's been quite rainy here. It's actually downpours all day today as well.
Oh man. Well, we can think to ourselves, we need the rain, right?
Yeah.
Try to look for the silver lining.
Exactly.
Well, it was an absolute joy to have you on, and I hope we get together for another conversation soon.
I hope so too. And congratulations to all the winners. We don't know who they are yet because it's not final yet, but by the time this comes out, as you mentioned, that'll be known. So
yeah,
congratulations to them.
yes, 100%. We'll have at least the top 10 out by the time this goes live. So we'll be seeing everybody. Very cool. All
That's
right.
great.
Talk to you soon.
So nice talking to you today. You take care. Bye now.